Okay, Rich Van Tassel here with you, giving you the recap of Week 16 now of the NFL season. We had the Saturday night game where Washington Redskins were able to clinch the division with a 38-24 win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Washington moves up to 8-7. Philadelphia drops to 6-9. Kirk Cousins in this game was 31 of 46, 365 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. So he has finally showed up on the road. That was a very good game. Alfred Morris, 17 for 49 running the ball, 2.9 yards per carry. Pierre Thomas, 4 for 22, 5.5 yards per carry. Jordan Reed was the beneficiary of most of Kirk Cousins' passing yardages. He had 9 receptions, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pierre Garcon, 7 for 80 and 1 touchdown. And Pierre Thomas, 7 for 67. Kirk Cousins fumbled that was not lost. D'Angelo Hall and Deshaun Goldson both recovered fumbles. Team had 5 sacks, very impressive. And Dustin Hopkins made his field goal. Sam Bradford, 37 of 56, 380 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. DeMarco Murray, 5 carries, 27 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. Darren Sproles, 5 for 9. Altogether, the team was 16 of 45, just 2.8 yards per rush. Ryan Matthews did have a touchdown as well as DeMarco Murray. Zach Ertz, 13 receptions, 122 yards. Jordan Matthews, 6 receptions, 104 yards, and a touchdown. Darren Sproles, 7 receptions, 56 yards out of the backfield. Sam Bradford fumbled 3 times, lost one of them. Zach Ertz lost the fumble. Darren Sproles, Brent Selleck, and Jason Kelsey all fumbled, but they were not lost. The team only had 2 sacks, no interceptions. Josh Huff returning the ball in the kick return, 2 for 65, which is 32.5 yards per return, longest of 49, pretty good there. And Caleb Sturgis made his only field goal. So Washington able to clinch the division. They finally showed the ability to win on the road. Their first game will be at home, regardless if they win or lose the last week in Dallas. With Philadelphia, a very disappointing season, obviously. Right about where I expected them to be with Sam Bradford as your quarterback. You saw didn't have any interceptions today, but the 3 fumbles and one of them lost. He's just not that good of a quarterback. I hate to break it to people, but the guy is a backup at best. That's what he's always going to be, and Philadelphia found it out the hard way. Not that like Nick Foles is playing much better, but hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles this year. They decided to trade him. This is why Chip Kelly is there. He does what he wants, and a lot of the blame's got to fall on him. DeMarco Murray not running the ball well either, not getting a lot of carries. The team only ran the ball 16 times, but it's just been a bad year for Philadelphia. Washington, let's see how they handle the last week against Dallas. If they play their starters or not. But certainly got to be a good confidence booster that they were able to play so well on the road. And they're now, 4-1 in their last 5 games? So hats off to the Washington Redskins. Alright, up next, the New York Jets defeated the New England Patriots 26-20 at home. New England drops to 12-3. The Jets are now 10-5 and on a 5-game winning streak. Tom Brady, 22 of 31, 231 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Brandon Bolden running the ball, 9 for 30, 3.3 yards per rush. Steven Jackson, 7 for 15, 2.1. Altogether, the team 22 of 63, 2.9 yards per rush. Rob Gronkowski, 4 receptions for 86 yards. Keyshawn Martin, 7 for 68 yards. James White was 5 for 28, had a touchdown. Jamie Collins recovered a fumble. Only 1 sack. Stephen Gostkowski made both of his field goals. For the Jets, Ryan Fitzpatrick, another very solid game, 26 of 41, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bilal Powell running the ball, 7 for 56, which is 8 yards per carry. Chris Ivory, 11 for 38, 3.5 yards per carry. Stephen Ridley, 7 for 36, 5.1. Altogether, the team was 27 of 143 for 5.3 yards per carry. So a very balanced and even running game yesterday for the New York Jets. Brandon Marshall, 8 receptions, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. Quincy Enunwa, 2 for 69. Eric Decker, 3 for 47, and the game-winning touchdown. Ryan Fitzpatrick lost the fumble. Chris Ivory and Bilal Powell both fumbled. They were not lost. The Jets only got 2 sacks on Tom Brady. Darrelle Revis did have an interception. And Randy Bullock made both of his field goals. A lot would be made in this game about the Patriots electing to kick off in overtime. Frankly, it's, with how ridiculous this overtime rule is, To me, it's 6-1, half dozen the other, whether you want to kick off or receive. You're not guaranteed to go down and score a touchdown to win the game if you do get the ball first. And if you look at it from this perspective, if you get the ball first and you don't score a touchdown, the other team either A, just needs a field goal to beat you, or B, will have 4 downs to go all the way down the field to get a field goal or a potential game-winning touchdown. Now, you won't have the 4 downs when you get in the field goal range if that's the case, but certainly extra downs really benefits your odds of scoring either a field goal or a touchdown. So, not the biggest issue. Of course, ESPN is going to come out and act like, you know, Bill Belichick sank the Titanic or something here, but it's really not that big of an issue to me. New England has to win next week to clinch home field throughout the playoffs. The Jets now control their own destiny in the playoffs because of the Pittsburgh Steelers losing. They have to go on the road and beat Buffalo next week, so we'll see if they can do that. But it should be interesting. Hats off to the Jets, who have now won 5 straight games. All right, next, the Houston Texans demolished the Tennessee Titans 34-6. Houston is now 8-7. Tennessee drops to 3-12. Brandon Weeden, 15 for 24, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception. B.J. Daniels did come in and go 1 for 2 for 7 yards. Alfred Blue running the ball, 15 for 45, 3 yards per carry. Chris Polk, 11 for 38, 3.5 yards per carry. Altogether, the team was 42 of 128, 3 yards per carry, 1 touchdown, which was Brandon Weeden who got it. DeAndre Hopkins had a good game, 7 for 117 and a touchdown. Nate Washington, 3 for 42 and a touchdown. Brandon Weeden lost a fumble. Quentin Demps, Jonathan Weeks, and Jared Crick all recovered fumbles. Only 1 sack. Eddie Pleasant had an interception. Nick Novak, 2 for 2 in his field goals. Zach Mettenberger, 27 of 51. This is for the Titans now. 234 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. David Cobb running the ball, 7 for 18. Bishop Sankey, 2 for 11. Altogether, the team was 11 for 32.7 yards per carry. Not going to get the job done. Harry Douglas, top receiver, 6 for 79. Delaney Walker, 9 for 59. Bishop Sankey, 3 for 43. 9 guys caught passes for the Titans. Harry Douglas, Zach Mettenberger, and Antonio Andrews all lost a fumble. David Bass recovered a fumble. 1 sack, no interceptions. And no field goals were made, so I guess they missed an extra point. The Titans did. Alright, so we'll start with Tennessee first. This team, you got to wonder really where they're going. They're not going to have Marcus Mariota the rest of the year. So it's only 1 game, but we're not going to see if he can really show any signs of true improvement the rest of the year. They're going to have to show that going into next year. What will they do with Zach Mettenberger in the offseason? We'll see. Houston now is just a win away from clinching that division, or a Indianapolis loss next week. They will clinch that division. Give them credit. They were 2-5 at one point. They've been 6-2. Even with the quarterback carousel, they've really found themselves. Their defense is really starting to come along, and I thought they were one of the better units in football. At the beginning of the season, they're certainly starting to play like it now, and they could be a very dangerous team, especially if Hoyer is able to play well and come back from his injury. But the first things first, they got to win next week, but give Houston a lot of credit for the way they've really turned their season around. All right, up next, the Cleveland Browns lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, 17-13. Cleveland drops to 3-12. Kansas City has now won 9 straight, and they're 10-5. And I believe they can win the division if the Broncos lose one of their next 2 games, and obviously Kansas City would have to win out. Johnny Manziel for the Browns, 13 of 32, 136 yards, no touchdowns, and interception. He was their top rusher, 11 carries, 108 yards, 9.8 yards per rush. Isaiah Crowell, 16 carries, 88 yards. It's 5.5 yards per rush and a touchdown. The team altogether was 36 of 232, 6.4 yards per rush, and the touchdown as a team running the ball. That's very impressive. Gary Barnidge, the top receiver, with 3 receptions for 47 yards. Darius Jennings, 3 for 37. No fumbles, either lost, recovered, or dropped by the Browns. Only 1 sack. Nate Orchard had an interception. Darius Jennings returned 2 kicks for 46 yards. Raheem Mostert, 2 for 30. Travis Coons, 2 for 3 in his field goals. Alex Smith, one of his typical games, 15 for 22, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Charkandrick West, 14 carries, 62 yards, 4.4 yards per rush. Alex Smith, 6 for 54, 9 yards per rush. The team was 27 of 136, 5 yards per rush altogether. Jeremy Maclin, 5 receptions, 49 yards, 1 touchdown. Travis Kelce, 6 for 43 and a touchdown. Alex Smith fumbled, it was not lost. No sacks. Marcus Peters had an interception. Boy, he's played well this year, the rookie. Niles Davis, 4 kick returns for 74 yards, so nothing really to write home about there. Cairo Santos made his field goal. Now, Kansas City, we discussed their playoff scenario. They've won 9 straight games. They're locked in to at least a wild card. They still can win that division, though. They were able to clinch when Pittsburgh lost yesterday. As for Cleveland, another terrible year. Johnny Manziel. This is why I would give Johnny Manziel at least a full season to play. You can't tell off a guy sitting him, starting him, having him third string and all this, and this is what you get. It certainly doesn't do Johnny Manziel any favors. I don't expect he's going to be a Brown, and he's going to have a hard time catching on here to any team in the league, but, you can't really expect much from a guy you're not giving or devoting enough playing time to. And that's the way it's been all season long for Johnny Manziel. They really haven't done him any favor, all career long. They're just not putting him in a position to succeed. And we'll see what the future holds for him from this point forward. Alright, up next, Indianapolis was able to get the win to keep their playoff hopes alive for the moment over the Miami Dolphins, 18-12. The box score, Indianapolis is now 7-8. Miami falls to 5-10. Matt Hasselbeck for the Colts, 8 for 15, 99 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Charlie Whitehorse, 9 for 14, 78 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Frank Gore running the ball, 15 for 85, 5.7 yards per rush, 2 touchdowns. Daniel Herron, 6 for 14. Altogether, the team was 23 of 100, 4.3 yards per rush, and the 2 touchdowns by Gore. T.Y. Hilton, the top receiver, 4 for 64. Andre Johnson, 3 for 49. Philip Dorsett, 2 for 29. No fumbles. The team had 6 sacks. Vontae Davis, 1 interception. Quan Bray in the return game, 3 for 58, not even 20 yards per return. Adam Vinatieri made his field goal. For the Dolphins, Ryan Tannehill, 26 of 38, 329 yards, 1 interception. Lamar Miller, 15 for 31. He was really held in check. That's only 2.1 yards per rush and a touchdown. Ryan Tannehill did have a 28-yard rush. Jay Ajayi, 9 for 23. Altogether, the team was 25 of 82, 3.3 yards per rush. And that's really poor considering you have a 28-yard rush in there and you still can't get to the 4-yard per carry mark as a team. Jarvis Landry receiving 7 for 111. Devontae Parker, 4 for 93. Lamar Miller, 5 for 36. No fumbles either way. 2 sacks. No interceptions. No kick returns. Andrew Franks, 2 for 2 in field goals. Miami, we'll start with them first. 5-10, really a disastrous season for a team that had high expectations for themselves. Really didn't suffer any injuries. They fired their coach. It's just been a tough year for them. We'll see how they can finish out. Indianapolis needs a win and a Texans loss the final week of the season. I'm not sure if they might be playing the Texans next week, which would be very interesting. I don't believe they are, though. Actually, we'll check that right now. If they're able to do that, if they're able to make the playoffs, you got to wonder if... Or no, they have the Titans next week. I didn't think they had the Texans. But you got to wonder if Andrew Luck is going to be able to play again this year. Certainly, they're not the same team without him. It's just been... That has been a really bad year because there was a lot of high expectations from others around the league for that team. Terrible season for the Indianapolis Colts. They've got to figure out a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They've brought in a lot of aging stars, and that also can be a disaster towards the end of the season. Hopefully it won't cause too many salary cap issues with that team. But again, will Andrew Luck be back next week? And if they should make the playoffs, will he play at all? We'll have to see. Alright, San Francisco lost to Detroit. The score was 32-17. San Francisco drops to 4-11. Detroit improves to 6-9. For the 49ers, Blaine Gabbert, 22 of 33, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Dwan Harris running the ball, 11 for 73. They were really struggling finding any runners left. That was 6.6 yards per rush. Jared Hayne, 9 for 27. Altogether, the team was 23 of 121, 5.3 yards per rush. Vance McDonald receiving 5 for 61 and a touchdown. Bruce Ellington 3 for 55. Blaine Gabbert lost a fumble. The team had 2 sacks, no interceptions. Phil Dawson 1 for 2 in his field goals. For the Lions, 29 of 37. This is for Matt Stafford, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Amir Abdullah 8 for 39, 4.9 yards per rush. Theo Riddick 7 for 22.9 yards per rush. Joique Bell 7 for 13. Altogether, the team was 28 of 87, which is 3.1 yards per rush, 1 touchdown, which was Joique Bell's. Calvin Johnson, 6 receptions, 77 yards, 1 touchdown. Theo Riddick, 7 for 63. Golden Tate, 4 for 59. TJ Jones had a 29-yard touchdown reception as well. Tahir Whitehead recovered the fumble. That was lost by Blaine Gabbert for the Lions. 3 sacks, no interceptions. Amir Abdullah, 2 kick returns for 69 yards, 34.5 yards per return. One of them was 46 yards per return, so that skews the numbers just a bit. And Matt Prater made all four of his field goals. San Francisco, I expect them to get to 6 wins is what I predict them at the beginning of the season. The most they can get to is 5. Certainly not a good year. I wasn't expecting a good year from them. All the talent they've lost going into the season, all the talent they've lost going through the season, they're not going to equate to many wins. I mean, they're down to about their 5th running back thus far this year. For Detroit, again, the 1-7 start. They have now been 5-2 since then. Give them a lot of credit. They have not tanked it in. They really have something to look forward to next season. There were a lot of tough losses here this year. I mean, the Green Bay one, as tough as it was, they were basically out of the playoffs or just on their last legs to begin with. But the one against Seattle early in the year, so really nothing to hang their heads for Detroit. They slipped, they had that rough patch. Sometimes it happens in a season, but they've worked their way through it. We'll see if they can get to 7-9. And they'll really be able to springboard themselves into next season. Hats off to Jim Caldwell this year for keeping that team focused. And a lot of credit for them, especially Matt Stafford limiting his turnovers the rest of the way. Good job for Detroit. Hats off to them. The Dallas Cowboys, I want to talk about a disastrous season. They lost to the Buffalo Bills 16-6. Dallas drops to 4-11. Buffalo improves to 7-8. Kellen Moore in his first start, 13 for 31, 186 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Darren McFadden, you got to give him some credit this year. He's really been professional. 19 carries, 99 yards, 5.2 yards per rush. Robert Turbin, 5 carries for 23 yards, 4.6 yards per rush. Altogether, the team was 25 of 121, which is 4.8 yards per rush. Bryce Butler was the top receiver, 4 receptions, 74 yards. Terrence Williams, 4 for 62. No touchdowns, obviously. Lucky Whitehead lost the fumble. Brandon Carr recovered a fumble. 3 sacks. DJ Olatoye had an interception. Dan Bailey, 2 for 3 in his field goals. Tyrod Taylor, 13 of 18, 179 yards. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Mike Gillislee running the ball, 9 for 93, 10.3 yards per rush. Carlos Williams, 17 of 76, 4.5 yards per rush. Both of them had touchdowns. Tyrod Taylor, 14 of 67, 4.8 yards per rush. Cowboys' run defense has been obviously a problem for them all season. The rest of the defense has been all right, but 40 carries, 236 yards. That's 5.9 yards per rush. Never going to win many games when that's the case. Sammy Watkins, 5 for 84. Receiving, Chris Hogan, 2 for 39. Carlos Williams, 2 for 21. Carlos Williams lost the fumble. Boobie Dixon recovered a fumble. No sacks. A.J. Tarpley had an interception. Dan Carpenter made his only field goal. For the Cowboys, we'll start with them. Disastrous season. This is what happens when you lose your quarterback. They probably should have stuck with Brandon Weeden. He was the backup. He was there last year. He knew the offense. I think they got desperate. Again, I said I would have benched Brandon Weeden because it obviously wasn't clicking, but a lot of it had to do with the play calling. And in hindsight now, it clearly looks like the tough move, or the worst of the 2 moves. and it's just gone completely out of control for the Cowboys. I'd be surprised. I mean, it's not going to happen, but I think there should be some consideration to get rid of Jason Garrett. He clearly has lost his coaching edge that he had last year. Way too conservative this season. Buffalo now 7-8. We'll see if they can get to 500. They can really ruin the Jets season next week with a win over them. And you know Rex Ryan would like nothing more than that. So we'll see what happens next week for the Buffalo Bills. Give them some credit for the way they ran the ball today. Maybe just a year away, but I mean, this team again probably let a few too many games go that they should have won. The Chicago Bears defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 26-21. Bears improved to 6-9. Tampa Bay drops to 6-9. Jay Cutler for the Bears, 20 of 27, 156 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Jeremy Langford, 19 carries, 83 yards, 4.4 yards per rush. Matt Forte, 11 for 54, 4.9 yards per rush. Altogether, the team was 39 of 174, 4.5 yards per rush. Kadeem Carey had a touchdown. Zach Miller, 7 for 69. Mark Mariani, 2 for 32. This is the receiving game. Matt Forte, 3 for 23. John Timo recovered 2 fumbles. The team had only 1 sack. Harold Jones Cordy, that is, had an interception. Robbie Gould, 4 for 4 in his field goals. Boy, they would have traded that 4 for 4 for any of those misses he had in the previous few weeks when they had tough losses. For the Buccaneers, Jameis Winston, 15 of 29, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Doug Martin, 17 for 49, 2.9 yards per rush and a touchdown. Charles Sims, 4 for 45, which is an 11.3 yards per rush average. Altogether, the team was 25 of 104, 4.2 yards per rush and a touchdown. Charles Sims, 3 for 72 receiving, 1 touchdown. Mike Evans, 4 for 61. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, 2 for 60 and a touchdown. Doug Martin lost 2 fumbles. Bobby Rainey fumbled twice. It was not lost. Joe Hawley fumbled once, and it was not lost. 1 sack. No interceptions. Connor Barth missed his only field goal. So, obviously, what stands out in this game is the turnovers. 4 turnovers by the Buccaneers. Oh, no, only 3. They had 5 fumbles, though. Only lost 2 of them, but still playing, a bit of Keystone Cops. And the missed field goal as well is almost the turnover, essentially. I don't know how far it was from, but that's how it goes. It's pretty much basically a turnover. And that's what did Tampa Bay in. They had really eliminated the turnovers they were having early in the year, and that's what allowed them to go on that run. But it's looking to come back to them right now towards the end of the year, so turnovers, that's what they'll be looking to improve on going into next year. Certainly no reason to be too disappointed if you're Tampa Bay. You've shown the improvement. Chicago, again, they're kicking themselves for letting those 2 games where Robbie Gould missed field goals get away from them. I'm pretty sure they'd still be eliminated by now, but certainly maybe get those 2 games, 1 or 2 here or there would have broken your way, and you'd still have a chance to finish above 500. But it is what it is. They are up to 6-9 now, and questions about whether Jay Cutler will still be can be the quarterback because they got him under contract the rest of the way. All right. Up next, the Carolina Panthers lost to the Atlanta Falcons 20-13. We said it in our game picks that I'm not going to go against Carolina again because I had been going against them the past 3 weeks, but I should have known the second I did again pick them to win that they would lose. Carolina is now 14-1. Atlanta is up to 8-7, but they were eliminated by the Minnesota win last night. Cam Newton, 17 of 30, 142 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Cameron Artis-Payne, 5 carries, 49 yards. Cam Newton, 7 for 46 and a touchdown. That's 9.8 and 6.6 yards per rush, respectively. Fozzie Whitaker, 5 for 32, 6.4 yards per rush. Altogether, the team was 20 of 155, 7.8 yards per rush, and a touchdown. Greg Olsen, the top receiver, 4 receptions, 40 yards. Corey Brown, 3 for 39. Jericho Cotchery, 4 for 24. Cam Newton lost the fumble. Josh Norman recovered a fumble. 2 sacks, no interceptions. Graham Gano, 2 for 2 in his field goals. Matt Ryan, 23 of 30, 306 yards. 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Devontae Freeman, 22 of 73, running the ball, 3.3 yards per rush and a touchdown. Teron Ward, 2 for 3. Altogether, the team 30 of 77 with the touchdown. Julio Jones got the better of Josh Norman today. 9 receptions, 178 yards, 1 touchdown. Roddy White, 5 for 67. Matt Ryan lost the fumble. Mike Pearson fumbled. It was not lost. Adrian Clayton recovered a fumble. 2 sacks, no interceptions. Shane Graham 2 for 3 in his field goals. So Carolina still actually has to win next week to assure themselves home field advantage the rest of the way. Atlanta, we discussed, they were eliminated by the Minnesota win last night. Becomes very interesting for Carolina here. They have to play their starters next week. They've shown some vulnerability now. Again, Carolina had played the AFC South and NFC East, 2 of the worst divisions in football this year. That's where they piled up a lot of their wins. And their own division hasn't even been very good. Atlanta is 8-7, yes, but the only other team in that division above 500, and they were in free fall from 1 point. So we'll see how Carolina is going to respond to this loss. You'd certainly rather get it out of the way and not have it in the playoffs. However, you see some vulnerability now, and you got to wonder how they're going to respond, especially going into the playoffs. So they have next week. They'll probably look to correct things. Then they'll have to see where they go from there, but certainly, Carolina can't be too happy about losing this game. All right, the Jacksonville Jaguars were eliminated from the playoffs. They lost to the Saints 38-27. Jacksonville drops to 5-10. New Orleans improves to 6-9. Blake Bortles 27 of 35, 368 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Jonas Gray running the ball, 5 for 31, 6.2 yards per rush. Denard Robinson, 6 for 20, 3.3 yards per rush. The team was 15 of 65 altogether, 4.3 yards per rush. Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns, 2 big days. Robinson, 6 for 151, 25.2 yards per reception, 1 touchdown. Hurns, 8 for 106, 13.3 yards per reception, and 2 touchdowns. Marquise Lee, 3 for 26. He also had a touchdown. Blake Bortles fumbled twice but did not lose any of them. Rashad Green fumbled once, did not lose it. Only 1 sack. Nick Marshall, 2 returns for 65 yards. That's 32.5 yards per return with the longest of 36, so pretty consistent and pretty good. Jason Myers did not kick any field goals. Drew Brees, 25 of 36, 412 yards. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Tim Hightower running the ball, 27 of 122, 4.5 yards per rush, and 2 touchdowns. The team altogether, 35 of 135, 3.9 yards per rush, the 2 touchdowns, obviously, by Tim Hightower. Brandon Cooks, he's had a good year, 5 receptions, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Willie Snead, 4 for 75. DeForest Cadet, 3 for 69, and the touchdown. 2 sacks. Bobby Richardson and Delvin Breaux both had interceptions. And Kai Forbath, 1 for 3 in the field goals. Jacksonville, boy, they've really fizzled out. They were playing well. They had gotten themselves to 4-6. They've been 1-4 since then, so not the way they wanted to end the season for a team that's really trying to show they're on the way up. I believe they are on the way up. You can tell by the play of Blake Bortles and both Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson. But still, when you get to 4-6, you're looking at, even potentially the playoffs. Well, that may have been a bit out of reach at the time. Certainly not the way to finish the year for Jacksonville. New Orleans, they're 6-9. I almost certainly want to avoid a 10-loss season. Just inconsistent all year, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and it showed through this game. They were up 24-6, and they only won 38-27. So an inconsistent year, and this is what you get if you're the New Orleans Saints. All right, I believe we skipped this and went ahead, and this was certainly a big game. I predicted it. The Baltimore Ravens beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 20-17. Pittsburgh drops to 9-6. Baltimore improves to 5-10. Ben Roethlisberger, 24 of 34, 215 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. DeAngelo Williams, 17 carries, 100 yards, 5.9 yards per rush, 2 touchdowns. Altogether, the team was 20 of 110, 5.5 yards per rush, and the 2 touchdowns by DeAngelo Williams. Antonio Brown, 7 receptions, 61 yards. DeAngelo Williams, 6 for 53. No touchdowns, obviously, through the air. Ben Roethlisberger fumbled. It was not lost. Only 1 sack. that belonged to Brandon Boykin. And Chris Boswell made his field goal. Ryan Mallett getting the start in Baltimore. Glad to see he's finally catching on somewhere. 28 of 41, 274 yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. Javoris Allen running the ball, 18 for 79, 4.4 yards per rush, and 1 touchdown. Terrence West, 13 for 42. The team altogether, 31 of 121, 3.9 yards per rush, and a touchdown. Kamir Aiken, 8 for 66 receiving. Kyle Jusic, 5 for 55. Chris Givens, 2 for 45. No fumbles. The team had 3 sacks. Jimmy Smith and Daryl Smith had interceptions. Colleen Clay, 2 for 58 in the return game. That's 29 yards per return. And both of them were exactly 29, so consistent there and good. Justin Tucker made both of his field goals. Now, Pittsburgh has fallen out of the playoff picture right now. They will need a win and a Jets loss next week. That's their only way into the playoffs. Baltimore, hey, they didn't have their quarterback for a lot of the season now. They were pretty much out of it when Joe Flacco went down. You know, just a year they got away from them. This is a team that's won a lot of games. I wouldn't put too much stock in it. And they'll look to rebound next year, but we knew they'd be dangerous. Jimmy Smith had the interception as we predicted going against Antonio Brown. And Pittsburgh picked the wrong time to throw in a clunker. But it happens, and they'll have to hope that Buffalo can give them a little help next week so they can regain themselves and get into the playoffs. Give the Ravens credit in that game, though. St. Louis, another one we've been predicting. I did not pick St. Louis to win. I said it wouldn't be surprising, but I believe that they would get up to at least 7-9, possibly 8-8. Once they broke that losing streak, they would start to play better. They beat the Seattle Seahawks 23-17. The Rams are now 7-8. Seattle is now 9-6. Case Keenum, 14 for 23, 103 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception. Todd Gurley, 19 for 85, running the ball, 4.5 yards per rush and a touchdown. The team altogether was 30 for 104, 3.95 yards per rush and 1 touchdown by Gurley. Kenny Britt, 3 receptions, 49 yards and a touchdown. Tavon Austin, 3 for 16. Benjamin Cunningham fumbled. It was not lost, so did Todd Gurley, and Akeem Ayers recovered 2 fumbles. The team, 4 sacks. Tremaine Johnson had an interception. Greg Zuerlein made his field goal. Russell Wilson for the Seahawks, 25 of 41, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was their top rusher, 6 for 39, 6.5 yards per rush. Fred Jackson, 2 for 11, 5.5 yards per rush. The team altogether was 22 of 60, 2.7 yards per rush. Doug Baldwin receiving 8 for 118 and a touchdown. Cooper Helfett, 4 for 43. Fred Jackson, 5 for 43. Patrick Lewis fumbled twice. Didn't lose any of them. Will Tukuafu fumbled. It was lost. So did Russell Wilson. Doug Baldwin fumbled, but it was not lost. No sacks, no interceptions. Tyler Lockett, 4 kick returns, 106 yards. That's 26.5 yards per return. Very good. Stephen Hauschka made his field goal. Now, St. Louis, hey, they had that 5-game losing streak in there. They won 2 of those. They'd be in the playoffs right now. Basically, very disappointing that they had that losing streak. They always play Seattle tough. Seattle with this one, this will likely mean that they'll have to play the NFC North champion in the first week of the wild card instead of the NFC East champion. So a much tougher game considering the NFC East champion is the Washington Redskins, who may only finish 500. So they've got to spit this bad taste out of their mouth and move on from here. Really disappointing one for the Seattle Seahawks to have given away. But we know that the Rams play them well. Alright, the Green Bay Packers got rocked by the Arizona Cardinals, who are really looking very good. The score was 38-8. Green Bay drops to 10-5. Arizona moves to 13-2. Aaron Rodgers, 15 of 28, 151 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Eddie Lacy running the ball, 12 for 60, 5 yards per carry. Aaron Rodgers, 3 for 19, that's 6.3 yards per carry. The team altogether was 26 of 101, 3.9 yards per rush. James Jones, top receiver, 5 for 46. Davante Adams, 3 for 42. Aaron Rodgers fumbled 3 times, lost 2 of them. James Storks fumbled once and lost it. Scott Tolzien fumbled, and it was not lost. Morgan Burnett recovered a fumble. 2 sacks. Mike Daniels did have an interception. Nothing of note in the kicking game. Carson Palmer, efficient, 18 for 27, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Drew Stanton came in and got a pass and completed it for 4 yards. Kerwin Williams, 8 carries for 44 yards, 5.5 yards per rush. Andre Ellington, 7 for 40, that's 5.7. David Johnson, 9 for 39, that's 4.3. Johnson had a touchdown. Altogether, the team 26 of 121, 4.7 yards per rush and the touchdown. Michael Floyd, top receiver, he's having a very good year, 6 for 111. David Johnson, 3 for 88. Larry Fitzgerald, 4 for 29, had a touchdown. John Brown, 3 for 25, had a touchdown as well. Kerwin Williams lost the fumble. Patrick Peterson fumbled, did not lose it. Corey Renning and Gerard Powers both recovered fumbles. Powers recovered 2 of them. 9 sacks. Boy, that's a lot of sacks. Clay Campbell had 2.5 of them. Justin Bethel had an interception. Chandler Cantizero made his only field goal. Arizona, they win next week and Carolina loses. They will have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They're really playing well on both sides of the ball. Very dangerous team. You got to look them as the favorite coming out. I don't know what their win streak is up to now. I believe it's now 9 games. So Arizona's really looking good. Green Bay. Game really didn't matter for them. Had they won and Minnesota lost, they would have clinched the division. But being that Minnesota won, that game next week is going to be winner take all between them and the Vikings. And speaking of the Vikings, they pounded the Giants 49-17. Minnesota improves to 10-5, clinches a playoff berth at least, and we just discussed they can win the division with a win next week against the Packers. The Giants are now 6-9. They dropped to 6-9. Eli Manning, 15 of 29, 234 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Ryan Nassif came in, went 5 for 5, 68 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Rashad Jennings finally figuring out the running game, a little too late though. 14 carries, 74 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. The team altogether was 20 of 91, 4.6 yards per carry. Ruben Randall, 2 receptions, 80 yards, 1 touchdown. Rashad Jennings, 2 for 62. Miles White, 2 for 34, and a touchdown. Eli Manning fumbled. It was not lost, so did Dwayne Harris. 3 sacks, no interceptions. Shane Vereen, 7 kick returns, 142 yards. Again, that's a lot of return yards, but you don't want that many returns in a game. Josh Brown made his field goal. Teddy Bridgewater, 15 for 25, 168 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Adrian Peterson, 22 carries, 104 yards, 1 touchdown. Jerick McKinnon, 7 for 89, 12.7 yards per rush, 2 touchdowns. The team, 40 for 218, 5.4 yards per rush, 3 touchdowns between Peterson and McKinnon. Jarius Wright, top receiver, 3 for 57. Kyle Rudolph, 2 for 53, and a touchdown. No fumbles. 4 sacks. Harrison Smith had an interception. He returned 35 yards for a touchdown. Captain Munnerlyn had an interception. He returned 32 yards, and Andrew Sandejo also had an interception. Blair Walsh, 5 for 5 in his field goals. So, Minnesota, again, very conservative. Not taking the reins off Teddy Bridgewater, which is surprising with Norv Turner. He usually likes to go downfield, as was discussed in the Sunday night game, but he just hasn't done it all season long. Adrian Peterson, an effective game yesterday. He'll have to do a bulk of the offensive load for Minnesota, especially going into the playoffs, and we'll see if they can knock off the Green Bay Packers and win this division next week. The Giants, terrible year. They were 5-4. They've been 1-5 since then. Gotta wonder if Tom Coughlin's going to survive this. You can't like the way the Giants have finished this year. Their defense has just not been good enough in the secondary, and it's really cost them. All right, so that is your Week 16 recap. We will be back a little later with the Monday Night Football prediction between the Denver Broncos and the Cincinnati Bengals. Thank you so much.